欠了银行几百万，也不是一个好老板。
I owe the bank several million yuan. I haven't been a good boss. My factory hasn't paid wages in 4 days. I borrowed millions just to fulfill orders for the US, and these shoes were supposed to make money. But because of the tariff war, everything is stuck in my hands. I haven't been a good boss, or a good father, or even a good son. My whole family is falling apart. These shoes were meant to be profitable, but now I'm stuck with all of them. I really can't keep going.
Behind me is inventory piled up in the warehouse. About 50% of it was meant for export to the US. This year has been incredibly tough, just too hard. The tariff war between China and the US has intensified to a shocking degree. Many Chinese export-oriented companies, especially those targeting the US market, have seen orders vanish. Production has halted, and logistics are suffering from a wave of empty shipment schedules. A growing number of foreign trade businesses are facing a survival crisis. Online, videos from industry insiders voicing their frustration are everywhere.
工厂和外贸真实现状很惨。
The real situation for factories and the export business is dire. Switching from exports to the domestic market has serious consequences. Factories are being forced to compete against each other. Take air conditioners, for example. Prices have collapsed recently. The domestic market has long been saturated. There's already an oversupply of air conditioners, and now a huge batch has suddenly flooded the market. Factories need to free up cash to survive. If products pile up in warehouses, the factories will go under. That leads to price crashes. But there are only so many consumers in a country of 1.4 billion. Supply was already exceeding demand, and now it's even worse.
这个关税对我们国内企业的
I was truly shocked today by how much tariffs have impacted domestic companies. I came to Shende to visit my best friend who sells sofas. Her factory spans tens of thousands of square meters, but now only 2 or 3 sections are still running. I asked her what happened. She said it's been shut down for a while already. The daily costs were over 100,000 yuan. She had no choice but to lay off all her employees. There are still tens of millions worth of finished products in the warehouse. She's not even in the country anymore. She's gone to Vietnam to find a factory. It's heartbreaking. I don't even know how to help her. Let me show you. This is all in-stock inventory. All of it is sofas meant for export to the United States, and this is just one floor. There are multiple floors upstairs and downstairs, but now there are no workers left. Everyone is on leave. Such a massive factory, completely empty.
你们觉得今年的经济形势怎么样？
What do you think about the economic situation this year? Ever since tariffs were raised, things have become incredibly difficult. I've been visiting different factories these past few days. Almost all of them are saying the same thing. Foreign trade orders have stopped entirely. Companies that rely on foreign trade have nothing to work on. A lot of machinery is just sitting idle. So the economic situation this year is extremely serious. Since taking office in January 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly raised tariffs on Chinese goods, starting at 20%, then climbing to 34%, 104%, 125%, and eventually 145%. According to the latest White House statement, the highest tariff on Chinese goods now reaches 245%. In retaliation, China announced a 125% tariff on American goods. This tariff war is making China's already weak economy even worse. To cope with the severe blow from U.S. tariffs, many Chinese businesses are scrambling for ways to survive. Some have turned to live streaming to sell foreign trade goods at deep discounts.
直播带货看不下去了，因为现在让自己压的真的是越来越难。
I can't keep doing live stream sales anymore. The pressure is just too much. I've already lost over 700,000 yuan. I'll take whatever price for this inventory. Just take it. I really can't keep going. Every live stream does worse than the last. I keep trying different approaches, but nothing works. So to all my longtime followers, I'm really sorry. I just can't keep doing this.
跟老板说声对不起。
Recently, Mr. Hao, who owns a daily chemical factory in Guangdong, personally went to clear out his skincare products. In tears, he said he's selling off everything in his warehouse. Anyone who pays can take it, and he won't keep a single item.
满满一大仓库货，全是给国外客户。
The warehouse is full of goods, all made for overseas clients. But with the recent increase in tariffs, they no longer want them. They say the price is too high now. When we first made these, they only paid a 20% deposit, and the rest was covered by us. Now that they don't want them, how am I supposed to keep going? I can't bear it on my own. I have to find a way to get these goods out. Honestly, these goods are all of excellent quality because they were made for overseas clients. Everything is top quality. Here's what I'll do. If you come to my live stream, I'll sell these products at cost price. If you're near the warehouse, you can come pick them up directly. Take as much as you want. If you don't take much, I won't charge anything. If you take more, I'll just charge the cost price. These 2 years have been so hard.
Under the pressure of tariffs, China's cosmetics exports to the United States are undoubtedly facing greater difficulty. Mr. Su, the founder of the Shira Cosmetics brand, lamented that this time they really can't hold on any longer. The warehouse is full of foreign trade products, now piled up like a mountain. The past few years have been tough, but they had managed to push through. However, this time he truly feels that there's no confidence left. Selling various everyday products that were originally intended for export directly through social media platforms like this is not an isolated case in China.
This afternoon, I'm going to live stream with my colleagues. First, I want to thank the customers who placed orders in the live stream room.
Recently, Mr. Zhang, the owner of a blanket factory in Jiangsu, went live in his factory's workshop to sell blankets, which has drawn attention. Mr. Zhang said, for export factories, the whole supply chain wasn't prepared for this. The machine suddenly stopped, and everything was woven, but we couldn't sell it. It really caught us off guard. I had to find other ways to survive. Our factory has nearly 200 people, 200 families, so I have to keep going. At the same time, Chinese goods are using platforms like TikTok, Temu, and Shein to sail out in a roundabout way. They're promoting direct factory supply and no middleman markup to offer extremely low prices and seize the European and American markets. On one TikTok video, which had over 6 million views, one Chinese merchant shouted, "Jeans for $1.30." Many American viewers asked how to buy them. To cope with the tariff war, over 10 Chinese e-commerce platforms, including Alibaba, Douyin e-commerce, and Kuaishou, have launched special export zones and green channels to help Chinese export products switch from export to domestic sales. However, in addition to lacking domestic sales channels, they also face fierce price competition in the local market. In the context of China's limited consumer market, local manufacturers are also struggling. The domestic market is highly saturated, and when foreign trade companies switch to domestic sales, they end up competing for limited market shares with existing domestic companies. Now, China's economy has been trapped in a deflationary cycle for a long time. Business profits are continuously declining, consumer spending is low, and domestic demand is seriously insufficient. Take home appliances, for example. According to China Household Electrical Appliances Net, as export orders return, the surge in supply is inevitable, putting even more pressure on the already intense home appliance industry. According to data from the China Household Appliance Association, China's home appliance exports reached $112.4 billion in 2024. With about 18% of it going to the U.S. Some of it can be redirected to other overseas markets, but a significant portion of production capacity will return to the domestic Chinese market. However, according to the factory owner, the domestic market has been monopolized by e-commerce platforms, and the high cost and low price competition among peers makes it impossible to make any profit. Mr. Wang, the owner of a fitness equipment factory in Zhejiang, told foreign media that his factory primarily produces treadmills and fat-burning machines for export to Europe and the U.S. After the tariff war began, orders from the U.S. stopped, and the domestic market has been monopolized by e-commerce platforms. Sale costs are high, and the business is no longer profitable. The factory next door, which made outdoor products, went bankrupt. Mr. Wang said, the impact on the U.S. market is huge. There are no orders anymore. Many big platforms now encourage foreign trade to switch to domestic sales, but the competition is really fierce, and it's not profitable at all. Shipping costs are so high. The e-commerce platform's expenses are also very high, and the gross profit is less than 8%, not counting employee wages. For graphic designers, customer service, and warehouse staff, there must be dozens of people. Our e-commerce branch in Suzhou gets visits from the Industrial and Commercial Bureau every day, saying our labels are unqualified, or we don't have the required production and operation licenses, or that we're missing some certifications. There are too many problems. The U.S.-China trade war has caused export shrinkage, slowed growth, and an increased risk of business bankruptcies. Foreign trade hubs like Dongguan are hit the hardest. On April 21st, a vlogger posted a video saying,
The biggest losers from the tariffs are likely to be these world factories. Dongguan has about 14,000 enterprises of a certain size, with 60% of them doing foreign trade exports. But now, with tariffs soaring and orders plummeting, the manufacturing industry is struggling. These foreign trade factories, to survive, have to turn to domestic sales. The whole industry is now even more fiercely competitive, and it's a competition to the death.
What he refers to as competing to the death is not just a snapshot of Dongguan, but a common challenge for China's manufacturing industry under the reshaped global trade landscape. The World Trade Organization has warned that the tariff war could shrink global goods trade by 1% to 25%. For Dongguan businesses that rely on exports, this is undoubtedly a heavy blow. Some factory owners in Dongguan are holding on, continuing to pay salaries, but their cash flow may only last for a few months. Some owners estimate that from June onward, many export companies will announce their closure or bankruptcy. As the US-China trade war continues to escalate, it means that the export engine driving China's economic recovery is at risk of stalling. The first quarter economic growth data for China exposed a key vulnerability. The reliance on foreign trade has not decreased. In fact, it has deepened. On April 18th, according to data released by China's National Bureau of Statistics, China's GDP grew 5.4% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2025, with net exports contributing nearly 40%, the highest for the same period in more than a decade. This data shows that exports are not only the main engine of economic growth, but their importance has further increased compared to 2024. The data also shows that the trade surplus with the U.S. in the first quarter reached $77 billion, accounting for 28% of the total goods trade surplus. This reflects China's deep dependence on the U.S. market, which is China's largest export market, accounting for 15% of total exports. It's worth noting that exports surged by 12.4% in March, mainly because companies accelerated shipments before the U.S. significantly raised tariffs in early April. This front-loading effect resulted in impressive short-term data, but is not sustainable. Under the shadow of the escalating China-US trade war, the seemingly bright export boom is actually hiding extreme concerns in the industry about future prospects. Commentator Li Lingyi used a vivid metaphor, saying that the export increase caused by China's rush to ship in March is like a last flare-up, and in reality, China's foreign trade is essentially collapsing. Additionally, the Chinese government's official fiscal data further exposes the potential fragility of the economy. In the first quarter of 2025, tax revenue decreased by 3.5%, lower than the nominal GDP growth rate of 4.6%. This was linked to a 14% year-on-year increase in export tax rebates and tax reduction policies, indicating that the government is using rebates and other measures to support foreign trade businesses. Bloomberg pointed out that the slowdown in fiscal revenue occurred before the full impact of the tariffs, meaning that the Chinese government may need to take on more debt to support the economy. According to data, imports fell by 4.3% in the first quarter, reflecting weak domestic demand. The real estate market remained sluggish, investment decreased by 9.9%, and weak consumer confidence further restricted the contribution of domestic demand to economic growth. One Chinese internet user commented that while they may not understand economics, they understand logic. The total consumption of China's 1.4 billion people is less than a tenth of the total consumption of the U.S.'s 300 million people, despite China having the world's largest production capacity. This can only mean one thing: work is being done, but the money is not reaching the people. This person's comment points directly to China's structural economic problems: insufficient domestic demand and wealth distribution imbalance. The blockage of external demand is a result of Beijing's confrontation with the U.S., where insufficient domestic demand is the root problem of China's economy. For Western countries, consumption is the decisive force that drives the economy, but the consumption power of the Chinese people is inherently weak. According to the World Bank and National Bureau of Statistics, in 2024, Chinese household consumption expenditure accounted for 38.5% of GDP, while in the U.S. it was 68%. In the first quarter of 2025, China's per capita disposable income was about $3,900, only 1/14 of that in the U.S. The total consumption expenditure of China's 1.4 billion people is about $5.5 trillion, which is indeed far lower than the U.S.'s $22 trillion for its 330 million people. It is about a quarter of the U.S. total, not a tenth as the internet user claimed, but the gap is still significant. This reflects the low income levels of Chinese residents, conservative consumption habits, and the concentration of wealth in a few interest groups. China, as the world's factory, accounts for 30% of global manufacturing manufacturing output, but many companies engage in low-value-added original equipment manufacturer production with thin margins. For example, 60% of Dongguan's foreign trade companies are involved in private label production, with profit margins of only 3 to 5%. A statement by U.S. trade advisor Peter Navarro is particularly striking. He accused the Chinese economic model of impacting global trade, being unfair in its domestic wealth distribution, and posing a geopolitical expansion threat. He said that the evil government treats its people like slaves, dumping extremely cheap products worldwide. Wherever its products go, they cause widespread factory closures and unemployment. Instead of using the vast foreign exchange reserves it earns to benefit its hardworking people, the government allows a small group of elites to amass incredible wealth. Meanwhile, they expand military power and invest heavily in building aircraft carriers. This government uses funds extracted from its people to bribe and expand its influence in places like Africa, engaging in corruption to strengthen its geopolitical position. That's why the CCP needs to be contained. If U.S.-China relations continue to deteriorate, or if other countries follow suit in raising tariffs, China's exports will face even greater pressure. The Economist stated that the tariffs imposed by the U.S. on China are a death sentence for Chinese foreign trade. This is because China can only dump its goods in other countries, but these countries do not have the vast purchasing power of the U.S. market. As a result, these countries will also impose heavy taxes and anti-dumping measures to protect their domestic industries. For the Chinese people, a fierce trade war with the U.S. is the last thing anyone wants to see, because it could make life even harder for the hundreds of millions of working people in China. Deputy researcher Wang Zhanxi at the National Security Research Institute of Taiwan's National Defense and Security Research Academy predicts that U.S.-China trade could shrink by 80% in the next 6 months. Not only could China's GDP drop by 3 percentage points, leaving only 2% growth, but unemployment could rise by as much as 30 million people. If the current unemployment rate, which is already over 5%, is added to this, the rate could double to as high as 11%. This would create tremendous pressure on China, akin to a devastating disaster.